Hello and welcome back. I'm Kriti Mehta. You're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines at this hour. Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the UK says imposing tariffs on allies is wrong after President Donald Trump threatens duties over Greenland. Trump plans 10% tariffs by February, rising to 25% by June. Germany says Europe is preparing united countermeasures against President Trump's tariff threats over Greenland. Berlin vows not to be blackmailed as European Union partners coordinate a joint response. US President Donald Trump tells Norway's Prime Minister the world is not safe without US control of Greenland. His remarks escalate tension with Europe over the future of the Danish territory. Global business and political leaders, including President Trump, arrive in Davos as the World Economic Forum opens. The agenda focuses on wealth inequality, AI, trade tension, and declining global trust. An Iranian official says at least 5,000 people, including 500 security personnel, are killed in nationwide protests. Authorities blame terrorists and rioters, with heaviest clashes in Kurdish areas of northwest Iran. The U.S. Justice Department says it sees no basis for a criminal rights investigation into the ICE agent who fatally shot Rennie Good in Minneapolis. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says standard internal reviews apply, while the Department of Justice is instead investigating Minnesota officials for allegedly encouraging protests. At least 39 people are killed after two trains collide near Cordoba in southern Spain. Over 70 are hospitalized as authorities launch an investigation into the cause. Syria declares a nationwide ceasefire with Kurdish-led forces after nearly 2 weeks of fighting. The deal integrates the SDF into state institutions and restores government control over key regions. All right, viewers, moving ahead now to cover some news from European Union. Now, High Representative for Foreign Affairs Kaja Kallas will meet with Danish Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen and Greenlandic Foreign Minister Vivian Motzfeldt to discuss escalating tension between the US and Europe over Greenland. This high-level meeting follows a diplomatic crisis sparked by US President Donald Trump's announcement of a 10% tariff on 8 European nations, including Denmark, in response to their opposition to a US takeover of Greenland. The tariffs are set to increase to 25% in June. Kallas emphasized that security concerns surrounding Greenland. She also warned that divisions among NATO allies could ultimately benefit China and Russia. The European Union is considering retaliatory measures, including a €93 billion countermeasure package and the activation of the anti-coercion instrument. Excuse me, viewers, as part of coordinated action, Poulsen and Motzfeldt will also visit NATO headquarters in Brussels to meet with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte to discuss Arctic security and Denmark's sovereignty over Greenland. All right, and joining me now in this discussion is Gilbert Doctorow, international affairs analyst from Brussels. Thanks very much, Dr. Doctorow, for joining me here. Firstly, for our international viewers, take us through the measures that are included in the bazooka or the anti-coercion measures that the European Union is mulling against Trump's tariffs.
Well, it's understandable that they would look upon these provisions that were put in place several years ago as an important tool for pressuring Donald Trump via his good friends in the IT sector. This has been a very vulnerable part of American trade in Europe. I think of the enormous fine that was attached to X in the last several months over its alleged violation of EU rules governing social networks. The point is that they would use this bazooka, as you call it, to attack Donald Trump's friends and supporters among the richest people in the United States, in the expectation that they will then pressure Donald Trump to rescind his plans, his ambitions for taking Greenland. I think this makes about as much sense as the European Union and United States sanctions imposed on Russian oligarchs, thinking that they would come running to Vladimir Putin and pressure him to pull out of Ukraine and stop the invasion and the special military operation. We know that had absolutely no effect on Vladimir Putin, and what the European Union is now contemplating will have no effect on Donald Trump. The least that he is concerned about would be pressure from his friends in the IT industry. They are all supplicants. They are all trying their best to ingratiate themselves with Trump. They're scarcely in a position to pressure him and to call upon him to rescind one of his most ambitious foreign policy initiatives in his time in office. So that will not work. What will happen is if the EU persists in this strategy, it will find itself in open conflict with Trump, and we probably will witness the most unexpected and remarkable event in 80 years, which should be the dissolution of NATO.
All right, talking about bazooka itself, Macron was the one to have suggested to use it, but let's remind our viewers that earlier as well he had mentioned about using it, but had refrained ultimately in the face of tariffs threats from Donald Trump. Do you think this time he will be able to get a consensus of the European Union nation member states to go ahead and finally use it should Trump continue on his aggressive tariff threat?
I don't think it will succeed. The European Union was created by the initiative of two major powers in Europe. These are France and Germany. A lot of time has passed since 1992, or passed since the creation of the European Economic Community, which was the predecessor of the European Union. But that basic fact of who are the most important member states of the EU, it hasn't changed. It is France and Germany. Mr. Macron represents France, but France is greatly weakened over the last 15 years or so by a succession of failed presidents, of which Mr. Macron is another one. Meanwhile, Germany, while struggling today and has suffered serious economic damage from the sanctions policy on Russia, from the destruction of the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, nonetheless, Germany is a more influential and powerful decision maker in the European Union. And Mr. Merz has already signaled a couple of days ago that he's wary of doing anything to have a war, a trade war with Donald Trump. He, a day ago, withdrew the 13 German military officers who had flown in to nuke to the capital of Greenland to participate in what was a demonstrative opposition, resistance to American takeover. He understood that was not so smart, and he rescinded that. He has drawn back those military officers. So, given this show of caution, which is quite remarkable, given the hot atmosphere in Europe, I think the Chancellor Merz will not go along with Macron, and so Macron's initiative will fail.
All right. Finally, Doctor, there are also arguments that are coming forth to the effect that Europe should be prepared for a more forceful response, even though it has sent troops, some of the countries to Greenland. How is it prepared in the face of a military escalation?
Well, it's not prepared. A military escalation is kind of laughable proposal because the European Union is in deep trouble from 2 decades, or more than 2 decades, almost 3 decades, of winding down its military industrial complex and winding down its men at arms. I think since 1991, the European armed forces have diminished by more than 1 million men. So it is in no position, even if one could consider the unimaginable military fight between the United States and Europe. Europe would lose in the first few hours, and I think most everybody knows that. So that is talking point. It sound tough. The European geopolitical project is a total failure, and the sooner that is acknowledged in the European institutions, the better, and to move on to return to the notion of prosperity that was the leading principle of the predecessor institution, the European Economic Community. The outlook for a conflict with the United States can only be the immediate dissolution of NATO, leaving Europe totally exposed to the Russian bear, whom it has been punching, poking in the eye, provoking for the last 3 to 4 years at least. That is not a pretty picture for Europe. On the positive side, it should be a wake-up call that Europe faces two threats. One from the United States in the person of Mr. Trump, who has 3 more years to make life miserable for Europe, and the other is Mr. Putin, whom they have demonized, although he claims he has no ambition of striking Europe or damaging Europe's interests. So they would have to choose, and I imagine that if NATO collapses, they will very quickly enter into negotiations with Russia about a new security treaty that will end this conflict and enable Europe to prosper.
All right, Dr. Doctor, thank you very much for joining me in this discussion. Moving ahead, viewers, now Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre has revealed that he has repeatedly informed US President Donald Trump that the Nobel Peace Prize is awarded by an independent committee and the Norwegian government has no control over the decision. This comes after Trump expressed frustration in a letter to him, stating that he no longer feels obligated to think purely of peace because he had not been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Trump also repeated his demand for control of Greenland, questioning Denmark's sovereignty over the island. The letter was in response to a message from Støre and Finnish President Alexander Stubb opposing Trump's imposition of tariffs on European allies over their refusal to let the US take control of Greenland. Trump has campaigned openly for the Nobel Peace Prize, which was awarded last year to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. Trump questioned Denmark's right to own Greenland, emphasizing that the US could protect it better from Russia and China. Joining me now in this discussion is Andrew Latham, who's an international affairs expert from Minneapolis. Andrew, thank you very much for joining me in this discussion. Firstly, this statement is very baffling coming from a 79-year-old president of the United States. Is one to think that his entire annexation bid, his attack on Venezuela, is only because he did not receive the Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and it invites me to get inside Donald Trump's head, and that is a space I do not ever want to occupy. It's befuddling, really, when you think, what is motivating this talk about Greenland? Is it a fit of pique? His nose is out of joint, as it were, because he didn't get the Peace Prize. Clearly, he is irritated by the fact that he didn't get the Peace Prize, and he's even treated Maria Machado as accordingly. Yeah. Or is there something else going on, a real and legitimate geopolitical concern that eludes most of us? Greenland is important, but the United States already has everything it needs from Greenland, and adding it to American territory would add nothing. So his motives are very hard to discern. I rather suspect that he made an offhand comment a while back, and when he got some pushback, some blowback, he dug his heels in and simply is now unwilling to let it go. So it's kind of escalated beyond what it initially was, but it's escalated in a way that has real geopolitical consequences. It's generating considerable friction within NATO. It's in fact undermining American security rather than enhancing American security. But as to his motives, I'll leave that to his psychiatrist to figure out.
Sure, Andrew. Um, but as far as his statement that the US is better prepared to protect Greenland from Russia and China is concerned, how much do you think that is true? Because I think it is a matter of fact that US may be better equipped to protecting Greenland than China and Russia.
Yes, on a scale of 1 to 10, the United States military, in terms of defending Greenland from gray zone and other kind of threats from Russia and China, would be an 8 or a 9. The European part of NATO, the European Union, would be a 2 or a 3 at best. As your previous guest pointed out, the Europeans have been happily disarming in the aftermath of the Cold War. And it's going to take them a long time to rebuild their military capabilities. The United States did not dismantle its military after the Cold War. It reconfigured it, rebuilt it for a different set of missions, but it is still very capable on land, in the air, on and below the sea, and in cyberspace. It is very, very capable. The thing is that in terms of defending North America, and Greenland is really important in terms of defending North America, the United States military is already extremely well placed to do everything it needs to do. It simply doesn't need to annex, whether it's by purchase or by conquest or by intimidation. It doesn't need to acquire Greenland to secure North America, to secure the North Atlantic, to secure the United States. It simply doesn't. Which gets us back to what really is motivating Donald Trump in all of this. Does he simply not understand the strategic reality? Or is there some other motive driving him that is not obvious, I think, to most of us? Maybe it's just that he's a real estate guru, and this is a big piece of real estate. I think that's to trivialize it, but it I'm at a loss to explain what's driving him with respect to this Greenland thing, other than ego.
Sure. Talking about the European Union and its preparation to counter Trump's advancements towards Greenland, the European Union leaders have called for an emergency summit on Thursday. This is a day after Trump has called CEOs at Davos at the World Economic Forum. What can we expect out of these meetings if either side will be able to come up with a plan that can mutually dissolve the escalation?
Well, it's important to recognize, I think, that when the Europeans have already dispatched a handful, almost literally a handful of troops to Greenland, and they're talking about doing more, they're not sending troops to Greenland to defend it against an American attack. That's not what's going on here. That would be ludicrous, in fact. What's going on is they're trying to signal to Washington, okay, hey, we hear you. We haven't been doing enough with respect to Arctic security more broadly, but Greenlandic security in that context. And now we are going to start maybe pulling our weight a little more and relieving the Americans of the burden. So the reconnaissance troops, the handful of troops that have been sent, a signal. If that's followed up by meaningful deployments of Danish troops, but also German, French, British, etc., then if Donald Trump is really concerned about North American security, he can breathe a sigh of relief. He can say mission accomplished and let the Europeans do the heavy lifting when it comes to Greenlandic security. If this is nothing more than a series of gestures that are empty, then I think Donald Trump is likely to double down and say, well, if you're not going to do it, we're going to have to do it. And that means logically, rationally, that means increasing American troop deployments under existing treaties with the Kingdom of Denmark. which is the colonial power that governs the foreign defense issues of Greenland. But he might ramp up talk of annexation and purchase and all of that as well. But it remains to be seen if the Europeans are serious. I think the Europeans have woken up to the fact that Russia and China do pose a threat to North Atlantic security in the Arctic, and that something has to be done with respect to Greenland, and this may be the first step in the right direction.
Sure, Andrew. Thank you for your assessment of the situation. Do stay on with me. There's some more information coming in. Viewers, French President Emmanuel Macron's office has announced that he will hold a defense and national security meeting today. The office has added that the meeting will address ongoing geopolitical tensions in Greenland, Syria, and Iran. This comes as last week Macron held an emergency defense council meeting at the Elysee Palace to discuss Greenland and Iran, among other issues. He then visited a military base in the south of France. In his speech to the troops, Macron highlighted the tense geopolitical situation and announced an increase to the French army budget. Request Andrew to join me back in this discussion with his comments first. Andrew, how do you assess Macron's steps as far as announcing more budget for the troops is concerned, and his going and visiting the army base to boost the morale of his troops? You've already said they have deployed European nations, combined some troops, but that's clearly not enough.
Yeah, I think there are two things going on, one of which is Macron would like very much for Europe to reverse the demilitarization that took place once the Soviet Union fell. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has been catalytic in that respect. Europeans realize that this is not an era of peace. This is not the end of history and the unipolar moment and all of that. History has returned in the form of great power competition, and the Russian threat is back. So if that's the case, the Europeans need to do more militarily. And the other thing, though, for Macron is this commitment to European strategic autonomy. He wants Europe to be a great power, not a dependency of the United States. And that means two things, one of which having a vision, which is European and not North Atlantic, and then the means to advance and defend that mission, that vision, on land and sea and in the air and space, etc. And so it's not surprising that, given that he's talking about revitalizing the French military and also signaling quite clearly to a domestic and international audience by visiting the base that that's his goal. So rebuilding the military and advancing the cause of European strategic autonomy, which is not being an American puppet, as it were. That's what Macron's foreign policy and defense policy really are all about.
All right, sure. Andrew, stay on once again. Viewers, we now proceed. Now, a massive fire has broken out at a sprawling shopping mall in Karachi, killing at least 14 people and leaving more than 65 missing. The blaze broke out late on Saturday at Gul Plaza, a large multi-story complex with around 1,200 shops. The shopping area spans an area larger than a football field in Karachi's historic center. Meanwhile, rescue workers have warned that the remaining structure has become highly unstable and weak and could collapse at any moment. Video footage of the incident shows fierce flames rising from the building as firefighters worked through the night to put out the blaze. This massive fire at the Gul Plaza could be Karachi's biggest fire since an industrial site went up in flames in 2012, killing more than 260 people. And now moving ahead, we're going to bring you some technology news. Now, Peter Navarro, former White House trade advisor, has criticized the practice of US consumers funding AI services generated in India while core AI functions remain in the US. He raised concerns about the imbalance, especially as companies like OpenAI operate domestically. This criticism aligns with US trade officials urging American tech firms in India to adopt an America-first approach. They've recommended prioritizing investments in US AI infrastructure and job creation rather than outsourcing. Navarro's comments coincide with growing concerns about the significant energy consumption of AI technologies. As data center usage is projected to double by 2026, tech companies are securing alternative energy sources like nuclear power to meet rising demands. Meanwhile, India's data center market, valued at $10 billion, continues to expand, with the government exploring nuclear energy to sustain growth. However, challenges remain in securing land, energy, and effective management for further infrastructure development. And that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching NewsX World. For more international news and updates.